Hey everybody, Mojave Trooper here, back with another video. And today I have for you a hilt that's been long awaited. It is the Aniflex Final Edition by 7 Chambers. This hilt has been in the works since a few years ago, since it was announced. I've been really excited about it because it was advertised as the most accurate, the best of the best Anakin Episode 3 replica that you could possibly get. And I know that might sound a little bit off-putting just because it seems like every year or so, or every few years, we have a replica that comes out and it's advertised as the most accurate. But I genuinely think this is going to be hard to beat, despite some of them coming out. For example, the Youngin Slayer, I did a video about a year ago exactly of the Youngin Slayer by Shadowfoil Props and Laredo Sabers. That's a great hilt, so keep that in mind, and I'll be comparing it in this video. But this one right here just goes above and beyond in so many ways, which we'll talk about. This hilt was supposed to ship back in April. But of course, it always comes down to the buttons. The buttons were delayed, they weren't ready yet. The maker or the manufacturer wasn't done with them yet. Everything else was ready, like the bodies, the blade plugs, everything was ready, but not the buttons. So they did not ship back in April, and they ended up shipping about 2 or 3 months later in the late days of June. And I actually got this one a few weeks ago, and if you follow me on Facebook, if you're in my Facebook Anakin Saber Group, you'll know that I posted some comparison photos already over there. I posted some pictures already of the hilts, and I was really excited to make the video because a few people have been asking as well, and now I'm getting to it. So this is it right here. This is the Aniflex Final Edition by 7 Chambers, by Lewis Petch of 7 Chambers. Brian Rogers of Veracity Labs also had some help in making this replica for some of the features that we'll talk about. So huge shout out to him as well. But this is it right here. This is what the box looks like. It comes in a really nice collector's box. It's apparently a 1-to-1 exact replica of a Graflex FlashCon box, which looks like this. If we're comparing it, see if I can get it in the frame. If we're comparing it to the Aniflex Elite, you can see some of the differences right here. First of all, this one is way smaller. I don't know if the camera can capture that, but this one right here is way thicker. The Aniflex Elite box is smaller, and of course the texture is different. This one has more of a popcorn, so to speak, texture, versus this one is just smooth. And this is how the Aniflex V2 box was as well. With the logo, I mean, they look pretty much the same, except this one right here says Aniflex Elite to differentiate it from the previous Aniflex runs. This one just says Aniflex, which I like better. I mean, I get why they did this to differentiate, but I just like the fact that it doesn't say Final Edition, it just says Aniflex, and that's it. And then of course the other difference is that here on the box lid, on the side, it has the Aniflex logo once again, versus here it doesn't. So that's really cool. This one, again, is definitely bigger, but I don't think it's necessarily worse. I think it's definitely better because it's just more accurate to a Graflex flash gun, if you care whatsoever about that. But anyways, that's the little comparison between the Aniflex Final Edition box and the Aniflex Elite box. Without further ado, let's get into the unboxing. So this is the box, again, really nice box. The lid opens up, and then you're greeted with a foam padding, thick foam padding. You remove it, and here you have the hilt. Now, for this particular run, there were two options that you could order. There was the single hilt kit, which just came with one hilt, all the swappable parts that you needed, but just one main body. And then you had the auction collector set, which is the one I got, which is the one I'm going to show right here. That one came with two hilts, two bodies, already pre-configured in each auction. So you didn't have to worry about that if you didn't want to. But otherwise, if you got the single hilt kit, they should be nearly the same. It's just you get two hilts instead of one. Anyway, when you open up the box, this is what you have. First up, you have the hilt. This one is the one configured in the Mustafar prop, or the first auction, as you can see. You have, if you got the auction collector set, you have another hilt, and that's the one configured in the second auction, as you can see. If I can get it to focus. Very nice. Then you have the FX emitters, if you want to swap them. If you're getting yours installed, I'll show you how to remove these. Really easy and straightforward. But you have the one that's in the Mustafar prop configuration. You have the one that's in the second auction configuration. You have two FX pommels, vented pommels. This one is a second auction one because it has the raised middle groove. You have the Mustafar one, or the first auction one, because it has a deeper middle groove. And then if you're getting yours installed, you have some switches right here that the kit comes with. I'm not getting mine installed, so I'll be keeping these in the box, but they would be really nice to have. I'm just putting this back here. Now, moving on to the main stars of the show, which are the hilts. I was wondering myself before I got these, how could these be the mother of all Anakin replicas, you know? How could it be the Aniflex Elite, which is already accurate? How could it be the Young Slayer, which is already highly accurate? And now that I have these in my hand, I can see why, in, you know, the research and discoveries that were applied to this. So first up, we have the first auction, or the Mustafar prop. Moving from top to bottom, you know, you have the emitter, which is a thin neck now. You have the buttons. They're made out of resin, just like the real prop. You have the clamp, and then you have the grips. The clamp card, I forgot to mention, is made out of the same material that the real prop clamp cards were made out of. They're not brass like the previous runs. I don't know exactly which material that is. They didn't tell me. I think it's some sort of plastic, but it is still highly accurate compared to the ones that are made out of real brass. And then the pommel, of course, you have the one that's accurate to the Mustafar prop. If I can get it to focus here, with the deep middle groove. Okay. Moving forward, you have the second auction configuration. You have the emitter, the thin neck. The lip right there, if you can see right there, it is black. It did not come like that. It came chromed, just like the Mustafar prop. And the reason for that is because they still weren't 100% sure as to whether it was black or it was chromed. We know that the first auction one is chromed for sure based on other reference photos, but we weren't sure for the second auction. I was shown a reference from a few years ago when the auction came out, which clearly shows that it's black. So I decided to paint mine, or Sharpie mine. And you might ask yourself, a Sharpie? Why'd you use a Sharpie? And that's because Brian, along with Lewis, made the discovery that the black part in the brass pin area is not actually gloss black. It's actually Sharpied. And, you might ask yourself, why do they do that? And the simple reason is because they were trying to be cheap with these, or as cheap as possible with these props. So they just use a Sharpie and, hope nobody would notice, but we did. But yeah, I decided to Sharpie mine to match the brass pin area. I'm not 100% sure if that's accurate, if the real prop is Sharpied. But I think it is, just because if the brass pin areas are Sharpied, then the case is that most likely the lip is as well. Then you have the polished cover buttons. The interesting thing about this is that, and I didn't notice this until I got the hilt, the finish on the glass eye is different from the back button. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but this is darker than this, and that's accurate to the real prop. And that just goes to show how above and beyond they went to replicate that. I would have been totally happy if they just made this the same finish, but no, he made it a different finish, just like the real prop, and that's so nice. You have the clamp section, which is nearly the same as the Mustafar prop. The only difference that changes is the clamp card is now raised, just like the second auction, versus on here it sits nice and flush. One of the differences right there. And then the grips, they are shorter than the Mustafar prop. And then you have the pommel, that is the one we all know and love, that looks like the Master Replicas, like the Master prop, the version we all recognize when it comes to Anakin's Episode 3 lightsaber. So that's really nice. So just to show you a little bit of the installable side of this hilt, I'm not going to get mine installed, as I have previously mentioned to some people. I'm going to keep mine static because I just, first of all, the Aniflex Elite is already installed, the Young Slayer is already installed, so I don't really need another install Anakin, and I'll just be keeping these as static replicas. But I'm going to show you how to disassemble the emitter in case you want to put a blade in case you want to install it. So the way it works is it has two retention screws. I'm going to show it with the one hilt. I'm not going to show both because it's nearly the same. But I'm going to show it with one hilt. And basically it has two retention screws, this one right here. And then it's kind of tight. If we unscrew the back button, you have access to the other retention screw right here. So anyway, You take an Allen key. I'm not really sure what size this is. This was one of the many I had with me. This one right here. So this one, again, I'm not entirely sure what size it is, but you unscrew this just a little bit, and then you unscrew this side right here. And now the blade plug should be loosened up. Now you can remove it right there. As you can see, the emitter itself is not part of the main body assembly. It's just a blade plug that attaches to the blade, or that retains itself like a blade. And now, if you wanted to use the FX emitter, now you can. This is the second auction one because it has the angled lip. So you just put it like that, and then you screw it in, and it should be retained. Well, I don't have a blade with me right now to show you, but the way it works is you're supposed to put it in the blade. These two little screws right there, if you can see them, they retain itself to the blade, and then that's when you put the blade in. But this is just how you switch it to each configuration, installed or static. I didn't Sharpie the lid right here because, again, I'm not getting mine installed, so I found no use for that. I'll just be keeping this one in the box. Also forgot, now that we're here, I forgot to mention this has adjustable bunny ears. You know, you can adjust the bunny ears to be raised like the second auction, or to be like the first auction. And let me show you here what I mean real quickly. Let me screw this in. That. And then this. Just like that. Okay. If you notice on the first auction, the emitter and the bunny ears almost line up. They're supposed to be like this. This is a little raised, but they almost line up compared to the second auction, where the bunny ears are noticeably above the emitter. And that's what's accurate. The Youngling Slayer has a similar system, which I'll show. But it's really nice to have that. If you have a single hilt kit, you can just adjust it however you want. But that's also a nice feature of this hilt. So moving forward, we're going to do a little comparison here of the other hilts that are considered top accurate. First off, its predecessor, the Aniflex Elite. I'm going to be comparing that to the Mustafar prop, or the first auction configuration, since, you know, they're the most similar, especially when it comes to the buttons, which I'm excited to talk about. The Mustafar prop, as you can see right here, and then you have the Aniflex Elite. pommels right here. And then the emitters. So they are overall very similar. I don't know if you can tell in camera, but the Aniflex Final Edition is definitely a bit thinner than the Aniflex Elite. I can tell that in person, so that's one big difference. Another big difference is that of course, the emitter is now a thin neck, swappable emitter, versus on the Elite it's just, thick because of effects capabilities just to fit a blade. Like I previously mentioned, the clamp card is now, or the clamp card here on the Elite is real brass, so you can see it's really tarnished. However, on the first auction prop, it is plastic, so you don't have to worry about tarnishing. I really like this better. Again, not just because of the tarnishing, just because it's accurate to the real prop. They are both made out of chrome-plated brass. Nothing's changed as far as that goes. The other difference, like I mentioned previously, the emitter pin is made out of resin, whereas the Aniflex Elite one is painted to look like resin, but it's actually painted metal. Similarly, the buttons are now made out of resin as well. The very same process was used to make these buttons as the one that was used to make the real prop buttons, which is really nice. These, again, like the blade plug or the blade pin, the emitter pin, I'm sorry, these are painted metal, which are still really nice, but at the end of the day, I think these are going to be just more accurate because they're resin. The other difference too is that these are much darker red versus these are orange. I think these are going to be more accurate now looking at it, just because that's what the auction, or at least on Propstore, looked like. I previously was of the mindset that they should be more orange, but I was having a conversation with my friend Moth from the Discord server. He showed me some pictures. One was with DSLR on and one was without. The one with DSLR on looked very orange, just like these ones. So I thought that maybe that was something that was happening with the reference photos, something similar to that, because they do look pretty red in the Propstore photos. Then you have the pommel. Of course, this has a deeper groove, middle groove, versus this one is just like the second auction one, or the Master Replicas one. And, apart from the installability side, those are pretty much the differences between the Elite and the Final Edition. Now, comparing it to the Young Slayer, a lot of people, when I compared it on the Facebook group, a lot of people said that, the Aniflex Final Edition is definitely more accurate just because the Young Slayer looks thicker. It is a bit thicker, I'm not going to lie about that. But I attribute that to just Laredo Sabers making his own interpretation of the prop versus, Lewis and Brian, they made their own when it came to this one. But again, you know, the differences are very similar to that of the Aniflex Elite. If I can get it to focus. The emitter is thicker for sure, but the blips are both chromed. The clamp card, like the Aniflex Elite, it's made out of real brass versus this one is plastic. With the Aniflex Elite and the Young Slayer, I forgot to mention that you can only use these two buttons as switches, or as main buttons when you get it installed. The Aniflex Final Edition, you can use these two buttons, but you can also use the gold switch if you want that. Personally, you know, as someone who's used hilts that use the gold switch, I don't like it. I prefer these two buttons as switches. But if you're a fan of that, then this hilt will definitely be for you, because you can use this gold switch right here. You can use, technically you can have up to 3 buttons if you so wish. But if you just, you know, you're like me and you just prefer these two, then the Young Slayer or the Aniflex Elite will be good enough for you. And then you have the other biggest difference, which are the pommels. The Aniflex, or I'm sorry, the Young Slayer made a breakthrough in that it finally included an accurate pommel that was accurate to the Mustafar prop, in that it had a deep middle groove. The low ground did that as well, but I wouldn't really count that just because it's a mashup of a few different props. But since we're comparing exclusively to the Mustafar prop, this is what the pommels look like. If you can notice on the Aniflex Final Edition, the outer groove kind of like sinks in with the middle groove, versus this one just is raised and doesn't really sink in. I think this one's more accurate, but this is still a real nice attempt. The focus is terrible today. I apologize for that. But that's basically the comparison between the Young Slayer and the Aniflex Final Edition. So that is pretty much the little comparison I had for you guys. I'm just going to wrap things up with talking about some of the things that I've been asked a lot. And that is, you know, if you have a Young Slayer, if you have the Aniflex Elite, should you go for an Aniflex Final Edition? And the answer is yes, if you care. Alright? I would say that the Young Slayer, I mean, it is readily available. Back when I did my video, I said it was the best and most accurate in 2024. And that was true, because it was the most readily available. You know, you had the Aniflex Elite, which was still a little bit more accurate, but it was sold out, long gone, very hard to get. Similarly, I would say something similar to this. You know, the Aniflex Final Edition, right now it is readily available. You can still get it, but it's gonna be a limited run. It's not gonna. I don't think it's always gonna be available unless Lewis keeps making batches of it. Which, I mean, I'm not entirely sure if that's gonna happen. What's gonna happen? But for now, we're just gonna have to assume this is gonna be a limited run, like the Aniflex Elite. The Young Slayer, constantly more batches are being made. For Corband, for example, recently Shadowfoil announced another run of it, which if you're interested, definitely go check that out. So if you have a Young Slayer already, if you care about the accuracy differences, about the wonky features, I would say definitely get the Final Edition. If you don't care, if you just want something that's already very accurate, more so than the ELF ROTS Flex, more so than the 89 Sabers, more so than the TXQ, more so than the LGT, that is definitely one of the best options. If you have the Aniflex Elite already, that's still highly accurate. Again, unless you want to have some of the little details such as the thin neck emitter, the refs and buttons, stuff like that, the swappable copper buttons, then I would say get the final edition. But if you're content with your Aniflex Elite, if you're content with your Young Slayer, those are still very good options. But at the end of the day, yes, this is the most accurate and the best possible replica available on the market right now. I definitely recommend it. You know, everything from the collector's box, the hilts are really great quality. They really are, and I'm impressed because these are truly the best replicas that I've ever held. I know I said that with the Young Slayer. I know I said that before with other replicas, but I don't really think any other replicas are gonna beat these right here, or this final edition right here. Just because, I mean, of the economic situation that we're in right now, you know, not a lot of manufacturers are making runs, and if they are, they aren't going to the level that 7 Chambers did. So I definitely do think these are the best of the best, and I do recommend it. So really quickly to wrap this up, if you do want to get this, they're not available on the 7 Chambers website. The 7 Chambers website is currently down. The only way to get it would be to, first of all, join my Facebook group, the Anakin Saber Club, or the Anakin Saber Group. Message Lewis Petch, he's the owner of 7 Chambers. And in that same group, you'll find a form, or a Google form, where you can sign up for it and you'll get messaged by him if you want to buy it. They are now shipping, they're in stock. I do have faith in this run, just because I think there's a lot of good things that came out of it. I know in the past I've talked about and I've warned about 7 Chambers and their business practices, but I do really think that Lewis is trying to turn it all around for the better, and you know, trying to improve things. And this hilt definitely is a sign of that. So I do recommend it once again. The Aniflex Final Edition by 7 Chambers. That's going to have to be it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. May the Force be with you.